Hola, hola, muy buenos días, bienvenidos a todos. Otra jornada más, última jornada de esta Cumbre Mundial de Economía Circular. Hola Seba, ¿cómo estás?
Muy buen día, Natalia. Bienvenidas y bienvenidos nuevamente a esta primera Cumbre Mundial de Economía Circular, que como ya hemos anunciado, es la primera y es realizada en nuestra ciudad de Córdoba, provincia de Córdoba, República Argentina, de manera virtual a través de Internet para todo nuestro planeta.
Y bueno, hablando de nuestro planeta, hablando de redes, por favor ingresen a cumbremec.cordoba.gov.ar porque allí ustedes van a conocer la grilla completa de lo que va a ocurrir a lo largo de la jornada de hoy. Y por cierto, en cuanto a todo lo que ocurrió ayer, realmente muy agradecidos por las repercusiones, por la cantidad de seguidores que hemos tenido. Y algo que quisiera destacar, la charla de Gunther Pauli desde Suiza en vivo fue algo realmente imperdible. Si la quieren volver a ver, ingresen a este sitio oficial porque allí la van a encontrar. Allí está, para que busquen en Instagram, para entrar en el canal de YouTube de la MUNI. Esto queda allí guardado para ser consultado, para ser revisado nuevamente y para ser disfrutado, porque realmente fue muy disfrutable lo que pasó ayer.
Exactamente, y para que sea posible de llegada a todo el mundo, este evento es traducido al portugués, al francés y al inglés.
Y también, bueno, tenemos el lenguaje de señas, ¿no?
And also there's sign language interpretation so that the circular economy concept can actually encompass everyone. Circular economy in the city of Córdoba is here for good, and it is the result of the work we've been doing for a long time now. Different stakeholders have developed different sustainable production experiences, and through our current administration, we're actually driving the community into this new production model. Since its creation, Bio Córdoba has developed different activities with all of the chain. And the first summit on circular economy was the step to create the cluster of circular economy in our country. Different agreements were made, cooperation agreements with the academia, and we launched the first school on circular economy. Education is then the most important pillar in the process. Shift them from the linear to circular economy requires the effort of all. This is why we want to contribute to the care of our environment as a host of the Summit of Circular Economy. The main purpose is to connect suppliers, producers, and from Córdoba to drive the shift towards circular economy, to stand up for our environment. So we'll continue with today's agenda with the sharing the experiences from around the globe. To be able to address this, we'll introduce the next panel, backgrounds and success cases of circular economy in the world. This panel will be moderated by engineer Fabián López, who's the Minister of Public Services of the province of Córdoba. The minister is a public officer, has been a public officer for 20 years. The panelists are Laura Ituria, who is the Circular Economy Club leader from Singapore, Diego Berher, who is the coordinator of international projects Mekorot, Israel, Luis Lehmann, who is the author of the book How to Click Towards Circular Economy or New Economy from Spain, and Claudio Portelas Biodiesel, who is the general manager of EPEC, that is the provincial energy company. Good morning, everyone. Laura, Diego, Luis, Claudio, thank you for joining us. To begin with the panel, we'll first begin with the presentations. First, Laura Ituria from Singapore. Laura, the floor is yours. Good morning, everyone. We'll talk a little about Singapore and the public policies regarding circular economy for the next few years. First, I'd like to talk a little about the Circular Economy Club. Some key features. We are the largest network of professionals of circular economy in the world. We are basically present in all of the countries, the main cities. We are an NGO. The club is made up of volunteers, and the purpose is to drive circular economy, that is, to shift towards a circular economy. Our job in Singapore involves supporting local events, organizing webinars, and supporting companies, and to create a solid network so that people can actually get to know other people in the sector and find solutions to their problems. The case of Singapore, you may know that Singapore is a very small island located between Malaysia and Indonesia. Because of its strategic location as an entry point to the Asian market and its stability, economic stability, it is the host of a lot of large companies, and we can find the absence of the primary sector, energy crisis, and the water depends. 40% of the water that is consumed in Singapore is imported from Malaysia, despite being a strong economy. And so to address these issues, the government of Singapore has developed the Green Plan for the next 10 years. The Green Plan intends to align the economic objectives of the country with a sustainable and circular economy. The main objective is to become the pioneer with zero defects and emissions, and to carry out these ambitious plans. There are four main sub-projects. I will deal with each of these sub-plans or sub-projects. The first one is called City in the Nature. This plans involves buildings, reforestation, and the objectives for 2030 will be to plant 1 million trees, to create 130 hectares of new parks, and to plant and to have local flora and fauna, and to have people living less than 10 minutes closer to a park. The projects that are being developed in order to foster these objectives are the new constructions. 80% of the buildings are low consumption buildings. Different reforestation projects are being carried out in urban areas, and the recycling ratio in construction materials has reached 99%. Another sub-plan of the Green Plan is Resilient Future, more focused to climate change. The objectives we can find in this plan to strengthen the coast, to improve food independence, and to reduce at least 30% to produce 30% of the products locally. The projects that are ongoing as regards these objectives are preservation of fauna and flora, vertical agriculture that have become really important in Singapore. The country's objective is that every building can actually produce and grow the vegetables that are consumed. Other dairy production, chicken production projects are also ongoing, and this is a solution that would be actually avoiding then or preventing a lot of issues as we can produce as long as we can produce our own food. Another important sub-plan in the Green Plan is the sustainable lifestyle. This project involves transportation, the number of waste also we generate individually and collectively. The objective of the plan is to have 75% of the transportation in public transportation. Currently, 60% of the transportation is public. And so we want to also double the number of bike paths, and we want to reduce the amount of waste that are sent to landfills by 30%. We basically have electronic waste, food waste, and packaging waste. Each of these types of waste has a specific project. For example, electronic waste is the provider, the supplier extended responsibility. So the suppliers or the producers are responsible for the products. And then the food waste we intend to reduce, for example, coconut peel or pineapple peel as raw materials for cosmetic industry. And as regards packaging, there are many projects in bioplastics and plastic development based on plants. Another plan of the Green Plan is energy change or energy shift. Shifting towards stop using oil. Gas consumption was 90%. The next step is to shift to solar energy to increase solar production, and finally to use low consumption energy sources, low in carbon. And as regards transportation, we can see that there's a reduction of taxes for electrical vehicles. We estimate that there will be 60,000 power points in the future, in the near future. So these are some of the projects that are being carried out. The first one is on the extended responsibility of the supplier. So supplier is responsible for returning and managing the waste produced by their own products. And this is a great advantage for the consumer because they don't have to figure out what to do with the waste. And the producers can also, the manufacturers can actually recover some waste that they couldn't do before. Another project we're working on, since it's an island with very little or few natural resources, is urban mining. That is the recycling of electronic appliances and devices to recover its materials, either precious materials or other materials that can be reused in other products or other processes. So this is very important in Singapore because we can have access to materials such as lithium or gold. And there are three main projects. The first one is CARS, that is a lab between the Singapore NTU, the university, and Recycle is the second project. Two large companies in the country, the telephone company and the post company, to collect electronic devices across Singapore. And thirdly is a company that is devoted to the recovery of electronic waste and precious materials and reusing parts of electronic appliances. Another important project is the water infrastructure, circular infrastructure of water supply. There are three main sources. 40% is imported from Malaysia, 2% locally harvested. The second, not 2%, but the second source is locally harvested. And there's also a salination plant. And so these basically sources, we want to improve this so as to not to import so much water. And there's also, we're planning this treatment, water treatment infrastructure. And finally, this is the Tuas Nexus plant, is waste management plant. It's so this plant is going to be built in the next 5 years. I mean, the building will be completed in 5 years. So basically, we want to recycle material and energies, for example, waste. Once, for example, water, once it's treated, and then the water goes to the energy production plants to create biogas. This basically creates a source of supply. So for one plant, this is waste, and then that waste becomes material for the other plant. And to conclude, why shift into circular economy, and which are the advantages, at least for Singapore, water independence that could actually address lots of issues, not only in terms of cost, but if there happen to be some conflicts with the water supplying countries, then it would have more independence, greater food independence, access to raw materials and minerals that are costly, energy independence, and also the possibility to create more local jobs and reforestations. These are great advantages for the country that can have a great impact economically. If you have any questions, you can write to me. This is my email, or then we can.
Muy bien, Laura, muchísimas gracias. Muchas gracias por compartir estas experiencias desde Singapur en la Cumbre Mundial de Economía Circular. Vemos que es un ambicioso plan de cara al 2030 y muy alineado con todos los objetivos de los ODS, ¿no es cierto? Y de los objetivos también del acuerdo.
And the objectives of the Agreement of Paris. So then the questions and answers sessions, we're going to leave it to the end. So first we're going to listen to all of the presentations. Diego Berger, that is the coordinator of international projects, Mekorot from Israel. The floor is yours. Thank you for the invitation.
Sí, perfecto.
Bueno, fue muy lindo escuchar primero a Laura con la experiencia de Singapur.
Very interesting experience from Singapore.
El mayor problema es de dónde viene el asunto de la economía circular.
Circular economy. I will share the experience from Israel, particularly water resources, which is my field of expertise.
Es algo que es muy importante. Nosotros estamos hablando de tres cosas que están
We are speaking about three things that are interconnected. There's a culture of the water, there's a scarcity of water, there is a public policy that is based on the need. So I will speak about the fact that the country needed to reuse the resource. So we began to use or to circular economy because our country has fewer resources, and just this is what Laura said before. In facing the scarcity of resources, circular economy is almost mandatory. We had to, in our case, we had to use our resources more efficiently and to use the resource we all have, which is just for you to have an idea about the water use in Israel. This picture dates back from 1948, when Israel, only 10 liters of water could be supplied to people. This was a time where the country was in state of coup. This is the baseline of circular economy. How do we tell people to use 10 liters of water? This was the only chance back then, back in 1948. They had to use part of this water to clean, to cook, to clean the dishes, and the rest they had to store it. And the water used, for example, to clean the dishes, they had to reuse it, put it in a bucket, and that water would be used, for example, to clean the bathrooms or probably to wash the clothes. This is how, back then, we explained to the people how to reuse the water. And there are 4 main pillars that made circular economy successful. The first one is it's a first legislation that is we call it the water measurement legislation. That is that states that water that is supplied has to be measured. It has to be. Bottom line, this legislation was enacted because the water that was supplied had to be measured. It could be water, but it could be also energy. What is not measured cannot be managed. So water for agriculture in 1955 had to be measured. The second piece of legislation is the water legislation that states that water is a public good and should be managed by the state for common good. So water is not a private asset, and this has to be managed for the good or the welfare of everybody, not for a specific sector. And that there's the third piece of legislation, and that there's a single entity that is in charge of managing the water resource. And the fourth piece of legislation is that the water sector is it supports itself. So here we can see the history of Israel in numbers. In black, the population of Israel, with 9 billion inhabitants right now, and we have consumption data in blue. You can see residential use that increases as the population increases. In green, agricultural use. And over here, you can see some things that happened in the past. And the important things were the policies that were implemented at the right time. So, because in the previous presentation, Laura talked about reducing consumption, and here is how to reduce water use and become more efficient. So, first of all, for example, in terms of irrigation, we did pressurized irrigation, and since the 70s, we began to use water, to reuse water for irrigation, and since the 80s, we had to reuse effluents, which is actually an early example of circular economy in Israel. But agricultural consumption in the 60s and 50s, 80% accounted for 80% of the consumption in Israel. Now we have been able to reduce it by 53%. And so it's closer to 50% now. So this is the largest project in the Middle East as regards water reuse. All of the effluent waters from Tel Aviv are treated, and we're producing almost 130 million cubic meters per year. This water is only used for agriculture, so we have to save and store that water, and we have what we call the infiltration sites. So we are pumping 160 so that this water does not mix with the aquifer. This water is really high quality water. It's not drinking water, but it has some nutrients so we are using the nutrients from the effluents. So in the water treatment process, these nutrients are not extracted because they can be reused for agriculture. And the other thing that you can see here, the surplus go through a digester, and the digester creates energy, electricity, and 70% of the energy from the plant is produced by the digesters. Here you can see how how the water is supplied, considering that there's a 10% loss in the grid, and that has to do with water or distribution efficiency. There are incentives to become more efficient. That's why the losses in the grid are very, very small, just 10%. And over here you can see the amount of water from gross effluents, and then part of it goes to what we call tertiary effluents, and the other part goes to secondary effluents. So we're using 85% of the effluents. Effluents are not treated. There are different water qualities depending on the use. So we always try to match the water quality and the type of crop that we want to get. So basically, we can see. So we can see how electricity and heat goes back to the plant, and the other part goes to agriculture, and it goes back to humans for agriculture production. So what you can see here is that since the 80s, the consumption of, water consumption for agriculture increased, and we began to use more reused water. A lot of the water that is used now is treated, and so we've been able to reuse the drinking water for residential consumption. So the water sector, the principle is the price of water is standardized across the country, and all of the costs are divided by the amount of water that is supplied. That's why there's an incentive to become more efficient, and this price also involves the development of future projects in the sector. That's why it's separate from the national budget. We can see that in 2005, water resource distribution, 70% was natural water, and only 15% was treated water. That was back in 2005. And in 2020, 50% is natural water, and there are two main areas: 20 treated effluents and desalination water, 22%. And due to the climate change, we'll have less water, natural water, and we'll have more treated water. In 2050, only 28% will be natural water, 40% will be desalination and water, and 26% will be reused water. So when we discuss climate change, the biggest issue with climate change, as I see it, is not only how hot it's going to be, how rainy it's going to be. The biggest issue is interannual. We'll have more years with floods and more years with droughts. So we'll increase the uncertainty, the amount of water we'll have. So to mitigate this or to narrow this gap, we need to use technologies to reduce this uncertainty. So what we see is that technology can help us become or be less vulnerable as we face climate change, or to become more efficient in terms of resource use, and to use less the resources, so we'll be less vulnerable. This is a project we did in Europe regarding treatment and agricultural reuse. And these are, to us, the main keys to success. First, a centralized management policy. Second, that there is a scarcity of regional water. Third, there's, education. A lot is invested in education and water culture. There is solid legislation, water price, and there is the necessary infrastructure for reuse. Another important thing is that there is reliability between consumers and the regulatory bodies and the government. With this, thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions. Thank you, Diego. Very interesting presentation, and how circular economy applies to water management, and the 7 keys that you presented in your last slide. We call it like the keys to success, right? Yes, and this is what your results actually show. That since we're running out of time, we will now give the floor to Luis. How to click towards your new economy. This is your book. Luis, the floor is yours. You're on mute, Luis.
Te podemos ver, pero tenemos un problemita con el audio. Fíjate, por favor, si hay algo en la compu que tocar, algún botoncito que quedó pendiente. Cosa que pasa, ¿eh?
Ahí estamos.
Ahora sí.
Ahora sí.
Gracias.
Thank you. I was just saying how grateful I am to be here in this panel. And then I will continue with, the water resources. And I think it's my role today is to provide a sort of a global perspective and describe some things that are going on in different parts of the world, particularly in Latin America. So we may have seen this slide on the left, the different crises we have ahead of us. So we're exiting the first crisis, COVID-19, and then the war recession, and then climate change as the huge crisis that as a result of the report of the United Nations that was released last week, And I believe that despite all of the crisis from the circular economy perspective, we are kind of like the surfer that is waiting for the right time to catch the wave and surf the wave. We are not spectators. Circular economy comes right at the right time. And this is why I acknowledge the work done by the municipality of Cordoba and the governments, the different governments that are entering into this movement of circular economy at the right time and also at the right scale. I mean, the city scale, the city level, because they are closer to the citizens, so they can actually, pass the right legislations. Last week, the International Panel of Experts on Climate Change released the report after 30 years of warning after warning about man-made activities regarding the global impact and the consequences in climate change. The report confirms our role, the role of mankind in these climate changes. And this is what is coming up. I mean, the consequences we could undergo, the global consequences, and climate change is very important. Obviously, in the last few years, there have been some news. For example, leadership shift in the United States. China has decided to also join, and they proposed a decarbonization of their economy. Since the energy matrix is still based on carbon, it's carbon-based, their times are different. The European Union, on the other hand, and I will go deeper into this in a minute, as a regional bloc, is leading climate policies worldwide, and at the center, this picture with Greta Thunberg, that this young lady that has become so popular, that shows that the new generations are involved in the fight and actually fight for climate change. And I'd like to say something about the European Green Pact or agreement that is creating different milestones in terms of legislation. This is another important aspect that changes can actually filter down to legislations and regulations, so that changes can actually institutionalize on and this experience of Europe towards sustainability in different projects and climate legislations and circular economy action plans. In last March, there was a farm to table. So all of these concepts that were mentioned in the different presentations, food security and sovereignty and so on, from the farm to table to the strategy of the European Union on biodiversity, another crisis we have ahead of us. And in July, and there are many other things. Every month, basically, there is a new package of regulations and legislations. In July, the Next Generation EU plan was submitted to for the post-coronavirus economy recovery. With this, I want to highlight the need to set agreements, legislation, and funding, because the recovery plan obviously has to be supported by funding. And the last point to highlight, also by the European Union, is the Fit for 55. Fit for 55 increases. Europe has a goal to reduce greenhouse effect gases by 2030, and the Fit for 55 plan is really challenging and ambitious. And then back to what I said before, the need to set agreements that can actually become legislations and standards. That has to be actually trickle down or filter down until they get to the citizens, the national governments, the local governments, and the citizens. The plans aim at, or Fit for 55 aims at reducing emissions. And finally, these are the different scenarios in Latin America, because Latin America has also joined this movement of circular economy, this new paradigm regarding resource management, and waste is just one of the resources, water, logistics, energy. These are resources that we have to improve regarding use and consumption and become more efficient. Mexico is discussing a circular economy legislation. Costa Rica also has ambition plans regarding climate. It's the first country in the world that has stopped oil production. Colombia has passed, is the first Latin American country that has passed the circular economy strategy and is leading a coalition of different international entities. Ecuador has approved or passed the first law on inclusive circular economy that also sets the horizon or the stand for the future. Peru also has ambition proposals, has worked on with different industries such as food, fishery. Chile is another country that is pretty much involved in resource management. And not long ago, they passed also their circular economy strategy that focuses on sectors of mining, construction, so that circular economy actually reaches these places that are really relevant, as I said before. I mean cities, small communities, so that circular economy can actually trickle down from the model down to public policies and solid actions. And Argentina is also taking the first steps on circular economy, particularly regarding industrial waste management. Uruguay, Paraguay also have made progress in this regard. I'd like to conclude with the importance of regional governments and local governments as drivers, and that the governments that probably were more connected to other activities in the cities, but now society is demanding further action. So the message is that the world has changed, despite we're not probably fully aware, because it is very difficult to see changes when we are in the midst of change, but those governments can actually face the challenge and use these tools such as circular economy. Will be able to reach sustainable development that is fundamentally meeting economic development, social development, and environmental development. With this, I'd like to thank you for your attention And then, well, I'll be open to the Q&A session. Thank you, Luis. Thank you for your participation in the World Summit on Circular Economy. There are many things to say, I believe, but we're going to wrap up with the Q&A session. Excuse me, before that, we'll give the floor to Claudio Puertalos so that he can give us his presentation. Good morning, and thank you for the invitation to participate in the World Summit on Circular Economy. I'd like to quickly have a look at this presentation. EPEC, that is the provincial company of energy from Cordoba City, is in charge of producing and distributing energy, and we reach over 1 million users, covering the whole province. Also through cooperatives, we practically reach the entire province. The project I'd like to show here is a project for self-production and self-consumption of biodiesel back in 2019, together with the provincial government and the Ministry of Public Services and Oreste Berta, that is a vehicle technology center that is very well known in Argentina. An agreement was signed to measure the performance of vehicles with a biodiesel. So a comparison was conducted, biodiesel versus diesel degree 3. After some time, with the test, because due to the pandemics, we concluded the first stage of the project. With a normal vehicle setup, the power, the performance was 5.3% lower than the average power of the vehicle compared with standard gas oil, and fuel consumption decreased. So from Oreste Berta, they modified the engine control measurement. It was reprogrammed so that the vehicle power did not decrease, and we can see this in the curves. And after this, and this year in April, the provincial government launched a biodiesel consumption program. This was presented in this year, and the slogan of this project was towards a new energy matrix that is local, sustainable, and healthy. Local means that Cordoba, even though it's a strong user of hydrocarbons, because it's an industrial province, we don't produce fossil fuels. They are imported from other parts of the country and from abroad. And it's a large agricultural producer. And so we could use this to produce biodiesel that is sustainable and healthy because of the emissions. With this project, we intended to industrialize all the regional economies and would benefit indirectly the health of the citizens of Cordoba. That was the main objective of the project. And this would involve existing plants or new plants. In the presentation, I highlighted self-production, because with this project, EPEC and the Ministry of Public Services decided that EPEC should participate in this project by building a plant, a biodiesel plant, and that biodiesel would be used for the vehicles of EPEC's fleet, and also used in the public transportation company that belongs to the municipal government. So we put together a team of engineers, began to set or define the best technology to be able to supply the company's demand, around 700,000 liters of gas oil per year, and for the transportation company, 1.5 thousand liters per year. And the best technology for the project was a batch type of plant, 5 tons, to process crude oil. So that free acids could not exceed 1%, moisture 2%, phosphorus-free impurities, and peroxides 10. So I'm sorry, but we're gonna have to speed up because we're running out of time. So this is the production process. To obtain 1 ton of biodiesel, we need to use 'and this is how biodiesel, I mean, this is sort of the treatment or the cycle of biodiesel by ton. This is how the process works. In this process, what we considered is a recovery of glycerin and a recovery of methanol. So with the recovery of methanol, we went from 150 kilos to 90 kilos of biodiesel with efficiency in consumption. This is the layout for the plant. This plant will be installed in a thermal unit facility. So now we'll be able to generate or produce biodiesel for the entire vehicle fleet from APEC. Thank you for your presentation. We're running out of time. So we're going to have a questions and answers session, 1 minute each. Which is the biggest challenge that you face to actually implement these projects, the keys to success? And, well, as Luis said, the biggest wave we'll have to face is climate change. And circular economy is closely connected with the SDGs, climate change objectives, and the reduction of greenhouse effects. Which is the biggest difficulty, the biggest challenge? We'll begin with Laura.
Le microphone est éteint, Laura. Ok, désolé.
So, the challenge is, I think that from the economic standpoint, implementing these projects and the challenges we can have as a government are basically the costs of implementing circular economy because the starting costs are pretty high. Although they are recovered in the medium and long term, other challenges that we can be faced with, mainly economic challenges, because in Singapore, for example, waste recovery is really important, but these projects need to be economically efficient. Those projects that are not economically efficient, then they are not implemented, and then the recovery in the short medium term. Exactly. So at the consumer level, individual consumer level, of course, I mean, we're very accustomed to a comfortable lifestyle and reducing the number of bags or packaging that we use. These are small actions that take time. I mean, we need time to adapt. It's difficult to accustom to not being that comfortable.
Without a doubt, getting out of the comfort zone is always a challenge, and sometimes the engine to get out of that comfort zone is need, which is what you said when you had your presentation. Yeah, that was the beginning, and I said in Israel and other countries in the world, that's different because here we have that culture because of a need, but the state evolution was important. We work outside from abroad to do long-term master plans And what we see is we need to change people's culture. We need to change the existing habits. We need to change the way people think, and also to trying to fight for the system's interest. We have a plan at 30 years, and it's very difficult to change the way people think. And as Laura said, trying to get them out of their comfort zone. Those who have benefits, they don't want to let them go. And it's a very complicated thing to do, to take people out of their comfort zone and say, okay, this is where we're at. We need everybody's commitment in order to install these changes. Yes, I think we're all going to agree on that, Diego. And we'll give the floor to Luis now. How would you face that huge wave? I cannot depart a lot from what was said, because everything that was said about what we need to do about a new economy, impose of a new economy, has to do with the cultural change. And as citizens, as people who live in this planet, places us as human beings in the center. We need to transform that need into action. We, at global level, we have all the tools in order to to make that step. We have the technology. That's why I know that we need to go deeper. What I mentioned before in my presentation, the agreements, so that they can be brought down to actual actions. If we can align the planets, we're going to be able to have an economy that is much more sustainable, much more human-centered, much more collaborative, much more inclusive. So I think that is the challenge, to try to have this experience, this year and a half, and to see if we can come to some conclusion and to walk together. Okay, Luis, Claudio. From this energy company that you work for and that you're managing, well, the project that we are carrying out, particularly, there is a very good positioning in society today. People understand what electric vehicles are all about, and we, as an energy provider, we need to go in that direction. We think in BEC that they are complementary. Electric cars and electric mobility and the consumption of biofuels is important. The technology is mature in terms of the city cars, with very short autonomy, and the vehicles that we have in the energy company, province's energy company, they're not just city vehicles. We need to cover all the geography in the province, and there is no technology yet in electric vehicles for the bigger vehicles and for SUVs, long distance SUVs. That is something that's one of the barriers that we have to demystify. Thank you, Claudio. Now we are reaching the end of this panel. We're all going to agree. I think the conclusions that you have mentioned, the important experiences that you have shared with us, and especially because of the reflection, the technology is available, the warnings are available, especially in this example. And the physical analyzing more than 14,000 papers, as you said, there is no doubt that we have a responsibility in our economic social development. It's a very important challenge. It requires a cultural change, and of course it requires that we organize more summits like this, where we reflect, where we share goals, where we try to set the foundations for a cultural change so we can all get out of our comfort zones. So as Diego said, the need is there. Now, humankind faces this need to decrease greenhouse gases emissions and to go from fossil energies to renewable energies and to click and to go into circular economy. Thank you very much. We are at the end, really enriching experience with all of you, and I'll see you soon. Thank you. Thank you very much. And we'd like to thank you. Let's think that you are in other countries, different time zones, two of them. The book author in Spanish speaks another language. It's been very enriching to hear these experiences. They tell us that circular economy is not a utopia, it's an applicable reality when you make the decision in the right moment. That's right. I'd like to thank the speakers, but also the moderator, Engineer Fabian Lopez, Minister of Public Services in the province of Córdoba. We shared with all of you the development of this World Summit on Circular Economy out of Córdoba, Argentina to the world.
Nous continuons dans ce sommet mondial d'économie circulaire.
In this World Summit of Circular Economy, we're learning a lot. We're learning words too. Remember when we talked about the word globalization? The possibility of going from one place to the next, of exchanging goods and services. Maybe the pandemic helped us rethink that word and to introduce a new one, which is globalization. And that's what we're going to be discussing now. The topic here is globalization's experiences situated in implementations of alternative resources. We want to tell you that in this opportunity, the moderator will be Deborah Placher, a very well-known journalist, graduated from UBA. She works in Modo Placher Rivadavia radio station. She's a journalist in El Cronista, and she's now a journalist in Nación Más. Welcome to this wonderful journalist, and thank you for being here. The speakers will be Joseph Marietos Borràs, former director of the Catalunya Waste Agency and president of ACR Plus Spain. Alina Bassi, CEO of Clayton, Germany. Oscar Rivas, Manager of Business Development for Geocycle in Latin America, Mexico. And as a key speaker, John Cluto, application and platform for small companies. So let's begin, Deborah. Welcome once again. Thank you for the presentation to both of you. We want to formally welcome all of our speakers. I'm gonna tell you which order you're gonna be speaking so that you can tell us what you think, your point of view, and to tell us what you have to say. We want to give the welcome to Alina Bassi. She's going to speak English. You can follow it in Spanish when she makes the presentation. First of all, we're going to hear Joseph. First, you. It's a pleasure to be here in Córdoba. I was in that city some years ago, and I really loved it. I'd like to share my experience in the Catalonia administration. I'm going to share my presentation. So, I'll talk about the society, the challenge we have as a society. Circular economy is not about fashion, it's a reality. And we know that we have to transform. As you know, Catalonia is a small country, 7 million people, such as Barcelona with 1 million people. We lost Messi, but Barcelona is still a good club, an international club, and it's clear that circular economy is something that we need, and we have to act quickly. There is no time to lose. Our experience is very interesting. We come from a very complex situation. This is an open dump in Catalonia, and there are political intentions of change. Without that, we can never go into circular economy. And we need to involve everybody, the political actors, stakeholders, the public stakeholders, the private stakeholders. So very important for everybody to change with specific actions and with money. Without money, there would be no possibilities to change. This is something that has to do with the cultural evolution. It's not easy to take measures. So as a consequence, these are the changes. The changes in the legislations are very important. We need to plan the infrastructure and solutions with the private sector and to leverage those tools. Without tools, legal tools, economic tools, the society is never going to change. Everything is a cycle. Our experience in Catalonia, we make this change through the waste agency, a public agency in Catalonia that controls and plans all types of recycling and all types of management of all types of waste. We give people resources. It's an important team, 200 people out of Barcelona. We plan for the Catalonia administration. We do planning. We analyze data. We collect information about how much waste and what type of waste each city collects. Without data, it's impossible to plan. We also do inspection. It's very important. So we inspect in order to support the private investors, but also check non-compliance. As I said, data is very important. Without data, it's impossible to plan into the future. Of course, the laws and environmental taxes. At the agency, we manage 4 million tons of waste a year. And this agency participates in different international networks. And the key is, of course, to go to create energy from waste. Each peso, each dollar that we invest in prevention, it will help us save money in the future. We do recycling, energy reutilization. A clear objective is that we need to implement tools in Catalonia since we have a company called Residue Recourse that is like a marketplace, an exchange point that generates rubber caps It's an exchange that works really well. This is key. We have a lot of experience to involve everybody who produce and generate waste, how to minimize and to help them manage waste. The design also, the design from the conception point of view, as the French say it, before we put something in the market, we have to think about the use life of my cell phone, my shirt, my car, the use life of these elements, how we think about them and how long we're going to use them, how we assemble them. That's the key. There is an observatory where we have all the public-private agents on circular economy, and to have a Catalan company, so to work together to, for example, build better roads in a more systemic way. Another element is the lab, a lab so that big companies that have their own research centers, or a small company that has only 50 employees that collect copper or silver, then to help them analyze the waste that they generate and how to minimize the impact of the waste they produce. We also have a waste cluster where we group the clusters, all those that universities together with the private companies, transportation companies, all of them work with the waste that is being collected to share knowledge, research. We also have the monitoring, and the key in Europe, we have the sanitation network. In a country like, for example, like Germany, the landfill is forbidden. It's impossible. If the landfill is not possible to do, nobody's going to invest. It's possible to do. No one is going to invest in circular economy. That's something we need to analyze. In 2024, we need to have a law approved for taxes. So the payment will be to invest in technology and in research. On the other hand, citizens and companies need to pay a city fee for waste management. And then citizens need to pay more if they generate more waste. You cannot have a flat rate. It's clear that solutions need to be global. The key is to have a political consensus. Another important thing is the economic support for cities and companies. Without help, cities cannot do their job correctly. They cannot collect, for example, waste. Companies need to invest in new technology to collect waste. And to end, communication is important. We need to convince everybody, all the stakeholders, private and public, that this economy is what's coming. We need to reinforce the idea of recycling electronics and the law, a new law adapted to the new reality. And a practical example, public procurement in administrations all around the world. In Europe, it's 14,000 public procurements. We just published in Catalonia that all private and public works need to be RFP'd, and they need to have 5% of their waste managed with obligations. Of course, the obligations were not easy to manage with all the stakeholders. Opportunities are very important. And why do we do this? Because of this, to protect the resources for future generations, not only for us. Thank you, Joseph. we are really strict with the timing, so I'm not going to ask you about Messi, but we're going to have some questions related to what each one of you said. We have to respect everybody's times. So let's now go with Alina Bassi.
Alina, bienvenida. Tenemos traducción para aquellos que quieran seguir tu presentación. Adelante, Alina. Muchas gracias a todos por la invitación.
Is everything okay? Can you see
Yes, perfect.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm very grateful to be here. A shame that I can't unfortunately understand talks that are happening, but yeah, I'll definitely watch after and maybe get some translations of my own. To give you some background about myself, we're based in Germany, in Berlin, city of Germany, and I'm originally from London, so you can probably tell from a very strong British accent. But yeah, our company, our startup is based in Berlin. So just to give you some background on myself, I am a chemical engineer, and I worked for many years recycling waste within the circular economy. I worked in recycling household waste and turning this waste into energy. I worked in recycling old tires into oil, which could be used as a fuel. I also worked in coffee waste, recycling old coffee grounds into biofuels, coffee pellets, coffee oil, and all sorts of other things. And now my concentration within the circular economy space is on clothing waste. So after studying my degree, I worked in this sector for many years, and now Cleidely has been featured in many different PR outlets such as Forbes, Vogue, Deutsche Welle, Wired, and all sorts. So really excited to present to you today my company, Cleidely. So the company Cleidely actually started with a trip to Tanzania in the east of Africa. And during this trip, for me as an engineer, it was my first time seeing clothing waste. And I'd worked in the sector for 7 years. I had seen so many different forms of waste and seen how you could reuse it, but I hadn't seen clothing waste. So it really got me thinking, what are happening to all of our old clothes? Where is it going? Is it being recycled? Is it being donated? What happens in Tanzania? And I was really sad to see that in Tanzania itself, they are bombarded with thousands of kilograms of clothing that's come from the EU, that may have come from the US or other developed countries. And we as these countries say that we're donating this waste, right? We're doing something good. But in real fact, they just get too much of it. And at the end of the day, all of the Tanzanians cannot wear all of the waste that we send them, because, you know, 30 years ago, when maybe our parents' generation were donating clothing, they were donating clothing of really good quality, things that people can wear, things that fit nicely. Now, as you all probably know, after buying clothing, just 1 or 2 washes and it's already out of shape. It doesn't fit well. There's holes inside of it. So the country of Tanzania, and actually a few other countries, including Kenya and Uganda, actually tried a few years ago to put together a treaty to say, we don't want to accept these countries' clothing waste. But unfortunately, they didn't succeed very much. So when we donate our clothing, we think that we're going to give it to local charities and they're going to donate it amongst people who cannot afford clothing. But actually what happens in these countries is it's sold on local markets. So people still have to pay for them. And this is still obviously much cheaper than buying things that were new, but the problem is that it doesn't fit them properly, or it's actually making it hard for local fashion brands or the textile industry based in Tanzania or in other parts of East Africa to do well. And so this is what really got me thinking about this thought around what happens to our clothes. So the truth of the matter at this point in time is that we produce every single year 100 billion garments. And if you think about the number of people in this world, that's too many clothes per person. And this number is actually going to go up to 150 billion garments by the year 2050. Because with fast fashion and consumerism and social media, we're now consuming clothing at unprecedented rates. And this change has really only happened since the year 2000. Before that, we were quite slow. We produced much less than 50 billion garments. But in just the last 20 years, we've already doubled and we'll do that again by 2050. And unfortunately, most of this clothing does not get recycled. The truth of the matter, and these numbers are from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which is one of the most important within the circular economy space. They have a research report to say that 87% of all of the clothing we wear ends up in a landfill or an incinerator. And so this means that we're putting so much energy, so many resources to grow fabrics and then to weave them into new garments or sew them into new garments, to pay workers across the fashion supply chain barely anything, to then transport these goods halfway across the world. And then eventually nearly 90% of them all end up in a landfill or an incinerator. This does not make sense to me. And it made me realize, and still to this day, that we have so much more that we can do with old textiles. The average time that it takes for clothing in a landfill to decompose is 200 years. And this is because clothing is not made from natural fibers usually. So obviously you can buy cotton, which is organic, that can decompose, but usually it's made from synthetic fabrics, fabrics such as polyester, such as viscose, such as elastane, such as nylon, which are not natural. So they are made from crude oil. Polyester is derived from oil. It's a plastic, which we are wearing. And even if it is, 100% or 90% cotton, there will still be 10% of another fabric. There will still be other fabrics that are difficult to recycle. Another problem with this is that even if we do grow natural fabrics such as cotton, the amount of pesticides required that are so harmful to the soil and the amount of water that's required to grow these fabrics also don't make it very sustainable. So this is a picture of a landfill site in Ghana. And as you can see here, what's happening is the clothing cannot decompose. It's starting to go this weird brown color. And the dye from the textiles is actually leaching into the soil and into the supply chain and contaminating water and contaminating soil. But if it's burned, then it's also contributing to toxic particulates within the air. So there's no winning. And there's nothing really in this case that the country of Ghana can do to stop this being a huge environmental problem for them in the short term. So it's no wonder that the fashion industry themselves produces tons of CO2 emissions. In fact, the fashion industry produces 10% of global carbon emissions. And it's actually the second biggest polluting industry after the oil industry. And actually, the fashion industry is producing more emissions than the shipping industry, which includes all of the logistics, traveling things across the world, and the aviation industry, so the flying industry and the emissions associated with flying. It produces more emissions than both of those industries combined. So we're really underestimating the problem within the fashion industry. For me, the circular economy is very important. I think this is the future of society. I think this is the future for us to save CO2 emissions. And there's a really good quote that I've read that says that if Europe were to incorporate a truly circular economy and nothing was ever wasted, then we could halve carbon emissions by 2030. That's only 9 years away. And the power of circular economy means that we could quite quickly make a difference and avoid all of these crazy climate impacts that we're seeing in the world at the moment, which of course I'm sure you've all heard about how difficult it's been these last few months. So what we decided to do with this is to think of something that's very different, that's not really done before. We've produced a plastic alternative using old clothing. And by doing this, we solved two environmental problems at once: the clothing waste problem and the plastics problem. What we do is we work with local fashion brands and local retailers in Germany, in France, and all over Europe to help them to recycle their clothing waste. We can recycle fabrics that are synthetic, also fabrics that contain blends, and we help them to turn it into this plastic. And the plastic itself is recyclable. So when it's used, it's not going to go into a landfill or an incinerator. Our goal is to keep it within the circular economy and to keep reusing everything over and over again. We do this by collaborating with as many different companies as possible. So if anyone's interested in collaborating with us, then definitely do email me or get in touch. But the only way that we're going to make a difference in the world is to collaborate and work together. So we're working with some really exciting companies based here in Germany, and also quite a lot based in France as well, to really try and help them to recycle their waste. We do this after producing our plastic alternative. We can produce lots of different products. And one very cool example that I like to give is the first product we produced, which is eyewear. So your old t-shirts that you weren't going to wear anymore can now be the glasses frame that you wear, which I think is upcycling, not recycling, because that t-shirt had nowhere to go and now it can be worn. The possibilities really are endless. We've produced many other things other than just sunglasses, but this is really just the beginning. The goal is to save CO2 emissions, and this is the most important thing for us. The European Union funded a study to say that we save 7,600 tons of CO2 a year, which is equivalent to driving a car 936 times around the world. So this is really important for me. My personal goal in life has always been to try and make a difference, specifically within the circular economy. And I would like to thank you all so much for listening. And I hope that you'll be part of our movement, and definitely do check us out, follow us on social media, or feel free to drop me an email.
Thank you, Alina. It was very interesting. Your email will be for all the people who are interested in keeping in touch with you. Stay there, because then we have questions for all of you. Ahora vamos a seguir escuchando a Oscar Rivas. Le damos la bienvenida. Oscar, adelante, por favor.
We're going to hear from Oscar Rivas now. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here in Córdoba once again. I'll share the screen. Oscar and then John and Ivan. Please, let's try to respect the timing. Thanks, everybody. Can you see my screen? All right. I can talk to you about circular economy in the concrete industry, Geocycle from the Holcim Group globally, to tell you how we in the concrete industry can be a solution, a complementary solution to all the circular strategies that we have. So let's explain to you first who we are. Holcim is a construction material company. We have aggregated concrete, and we're active in more than 75 countries, a leading company in construction material, and the first company in our sector in the world that we have net zero emissions. I think all of us have seen what circular economy. I'm going to take Joseph's words. At the end of the day, it's circular economy that makes waste to turn and transforms it, that takes waste and transforms it into a new product. Something that GeoCycle knows very well about. Circular economy makes it possible for us to reduce up to 40% of CO2 emissions in the concrete industry and other industries as well. First of all, we need to see waste as a resource, to find different types of resources, mostly industrial, but also city and commercial resources, so that we can integrate all of that and transform that into concrete. We will reduce the use of fossil fuels and to have more alternatives that are low in carbon emissions. We have promised that by 2030 we're going to reduce the intensity of CO2 emissions, and that requires a lot of effort. We, it's part of our strategy of the net zero strategy, and we are implementing actual actions to impose that in the market. So what are we doing? Nowadays, we are world leaders in recycling and validation of waste. Last year, we were able to reuse 46 million tons of waste. That was in 2020. And we also have a public promise that in 2030, we will be able to have 100 million tons. How do we do it? At the end of the day, the concrete process has different stages, and those stages we can integrate waste that could be basically turning into the same problem. So alternative raw material at origin, and to transform that into clinker. It's a new concrete type of machinery. And then in the grinding of concrete, of tons and tons of concrete that they would have ended up in a landfill space or in an open dump. This is the way that Holcim has been working on to contribute with the planet, and we can take advantage of a process that already exists to make concrete and to integrate waste from other industries. And this is the part where we see waste as a resource. An important part of our process is to take advantage that we have a furnace that is under very well-controlled situations, more than 200,000 degrees centigrade. So we can incinerate all types of materials or wastes. So we have this here, the hierarchy of waste management. What is the process that we need to do? Because it's important to say we privilege all solutions that are in prevention, reuse, and recycling. That will be a tradition. But there are some waste that do not have a recycling possibility, and that's when we do comprehensive processing. The energy that this waste has as an alternative fuel, and to integrate ashes and everything that has to be fabricated or manufactured. We also introduce in the process all types of waste, and there is no subproduct. We produce concrete. And at the same time, it reduces greenhouse gases. As a case study, very interesting, something we are doing actually in Cordoba, Argentina, and in other parts of Latin America. We are working very actively to implement classification stations for waste, to separate waste that comes without any origin classification, something that Joseph said. Latin America, we don't have any incentives to promote selective collection. A lot of waste, everything that is being wasted at homes ends up in a landfill space. And so we need to divide organics from the rest of the waste to the light waste. Most of the time is packaging, plastic, cardboard, textile, all of it all contaminated because it came with all the trash. But that, at the end of the day, we can put it in our GeoCycle plants. divide them, transfer them to the wholesale plants, and to integrate them into the concrete cycle, manufacturing cycle. So all of this is waste that didn't have any type of hope for us to do anything with it. And with these plans that we have, for example, in Córdoba, and that we continue developing, we hope that in the next year we can prevent 25,000 tons of solid waste to end up in a landfill. This is something that we started last year, and we are extending the classification station. And in the future, we think that we will be able to recover a few plastic contents from this waste in order to have traditional recycling for the plastic, if that's feasible. At the end of the day, we are getting the best solution of circular economy. So for that waste that had no opportunities to be recycled to be transformed into something else. They were going to be landfilled, and we classify them mechanically, and we turn them into a resource that can be integrated as alternative fuel in the cement process manufacturing process. We are doing that at a bigger scale. This year, we are expecting to recover and revalue 3.1 million tons of waste in the different countries where we have operations. And that's part of what we wanted to share with you, the way in which we can, as a concrete company, to contribute with the solutions of circular economy. And of course, I look forward to the questions. Thank you, Oscar. Very interesting to hear from you. Now, Jean Cloteau, we want to hear from you. Thank you for respecting the time so that we can continue with Ivan. Jean, you're up.
Happy to be here and share this time with the community that is, and how important for us is human factor. We're working a lot on digital communities. Ouija is a platform that supports entrepreneurs. It is an initiative to use digital resources to actually move faster and continue to grow value. As we saw with Alina, it's very important to become interested in the world, particularly in those areas that is more difficult. A nice example from the vast country, I'm in Paris now. This is upcycling, and you can see here, this is the name of a ship. This is made out of a vest, a life vest. We're talking about thousands of them that are disposed of, and now from them, then they can be turned into other objects that can be used. And also, I mean, you can see like it's a fishing net. In 2021, 2022, circular economy involves in the human factor. That is how we can change behavior at the level of companies, particularly entrepreneurs, small entrepreneurs that play an important role. That is, they should become involved to have a more decentralized vision. So we built a platform called Ouija to promote digital identity at the service of a circular economy. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jean. Well, now I'll give the floor to the last speaker, Ivan. Good morning and welcome to Techia, Advanced Chemical Technology. Techia is a chemical company that is devoted to the development of products for environmental protection. In 2019, 2020 will receive different awards as the best company on chemical development in South America. This week, we were informed that we were giving the award on environment in Chile, so we're very glad about this. Human beings, and we know that we are destroying lakes, rivers, the air, that is, we're killing the world for future generations. This destruction is related to the pollution we build on a daily basis. So we want to seek solutions to these big problems. The purpose of this presentation has to do with our latest development. Tecascata is a material catalyzer, so we can transform any dynamic waste, even oil waste, into biofertilizers. And this is done in 60 minutes. To really understand catalysis, it creates a chemical reaction, in other words, and to understand nature, it takes about 6 months to turn these matter so that plants can use them in their nutrition process without producing any damage to the environment. We can do this in 60 minutes without undesirable effects such as odors or other infections. Tecascata also prevents the formation of greenhouse gases, which is a huge problem that does not have any possible solution. Our biggest impact is to take any organic matter and to immediately transform it into a biofertilizer, thereby eliminating all of the problems mentioned before. So, field experiences, we transformed an emergency into a life opportunity. In February this year, Arauca, in the southern region in Chile, then there's the fishing of sardines. That what we did was we transformed this problem into a solution by catalyzing 300 wasted sardines, so they became a powerful biofertilizer. Today, we can see a beautiful field with oat without any flies, no insects. So this procedure was cheaper than actually disposing that in a landfill. Based on this experience from Mexico, they requested a scientific mission to address an issue they have in the Maya Rivera. So cascata is not only to be used in this way. Today, it is available for public in general. Households can produce biofertilizers for their own plants, their vegetable gardens, thereby creating an important social impact. On the other hand, the food industry, the salmon food industry, then catalyze, they can use this so that salmon do not decompose on water, so that when they get to land, then the transformation is almost instantaneous. How do we see the future? By shifting the way we manage waste, shifting from passive to an active approach, because waste will have an economic value. As a result of this, we're finishing an agreement with a company in Chile for waste management. The biofertilizers will then be used in the agro industry. What does this mean?
What does this mean? When raw organic materials are applied to the soil, it seemed to be good, but it's contaminated because you need many months for bacteria to process that, leaving a stench and a contamination in the layers of the land. We increase the production also of greenhouse gases. When we catalyze with Tekia's methods, the land absorbs the nutrients with less impact on the environment. Millions, thousands of trash being deposited. We are already working with some cities to start pilot projects in organic trash collection and management. We are giving back to the land the carbon that we are using, and we can transform our deserts in a nice place to live. There are millions of liters so that they're wasted every day. Staxcata will make it able to reuse, and the sewage water as well. We are the future in waste management around the world. We can advance into a much cleaner world. We are aware that we can contribute in the circular economy. This idea of transforming our waste that nowadays are piling, we can transform those into an asset. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ivan. I'm going to ask you, all of you, to answer. I'm going to ask a question, the same question to all of you. Just 1-2 minutes to answer in the same order in which you talked. Alina, la pregunta es la misma para todos. Le vamos a preguntar algo, una respuesta muy corta. La pregunta es sobre el sector público. ¿Cuál es la importancia del sector público? So the question is, what is the role of the public sector in the articulation between public and private in all this that we were discussing? So first, Joseph.
Es clave. Yo que participo en nuestros campos, en los ámbitos público y privado, la voluntad política de hacer cambiar, haciendo legislación, dando apoyo, reducciones fiscales y subvenciones, es muy importante. Estamos en una revolución y los primeros pasos de toda revolución se necesitan apoyos. Pero el mercado por sí solo aún no está creado, los consumidores aún no demandan ese tipo de productos y las inversiones para hacer un cambio productivo.
It's not easy to do it. So the politicians need to pay attention to this. So the political will is important for leading the change. Alina?
Yes, sorry, I didn't hear the question. My internet went out.
Okay, now the question is, what's the importance of the public sector, the interaction in between the public sector and the private sector?
Very important. I mean, at the end of the day, the way climate change is steadily increasing its impacts very quickly. I mean, even just in this last year, how scary it's been to see flash floods, to, all sorts of climate change effects. I think it's so important that both sectors and all sectors work together. And if we don't get all sectors involved, then we cannot create change. And we really don't have enough time before large cities across the world start to get flooded. So the quicker we all work together across all stakeholders involved, I think the better it is.
Thank you, Alina. Te escuchamos, Oscar.
Claro, gracias. Es, esencial.
I think it's key. The idea that the public sector contributes with legislations and regulations to help the population do better things with their waste and prevent for those wastes to get to the landfills, I think it's key in order for us to escalate in Latin America. Thank you, Oscar. And now we'll hear from Jean. Jean? interesting to see. You know, there is a global trend to decentralize, and that impacts on the power that administrations can have and the decentralization entities can have, and that helps public policies because the minorities may oppose to the will of the common collective people. And in that sense, I do think that public policies are the key framework to accelerate the general atmosphere. But I also think that I am more towards the small initiatives in small communities, in the sense that they could be more individual, smaller groups interacting, and then the capillarity of circular economy that is going to be more efficient than all the huge minorities have become much more active and powerful. Thank you. Thank you, Jean. And now let's hear Ivan. Well, the role of the state is vital in this transition. In Chile, we need to make changes in the administrative processes. We're going to give you a clear example. Nowadays, we are producing fertilizers from percolated waste. Percolated waste have a definition of a final end in the Chilean regulation. But the role of the state is to make those waste, make that waste available, and to give it the final end. And that's something that only Chilean government can do. One of the biggest impacts that we need to make those changes is to convince the government, the administration, that they must make these changes, because we can have the raw material, percolated, we can have a user, an agricultural farmer, but the administration doesn't allow raw materials to go directly to the agricultural industry. So the process, the administration needs to promote circular economy through legislations, and I think that's one of the most important things, at least here in Chile. Thank you very much. It's been very interesting. It's been interesting to see the different points of view, what happens in the textile industry, going through the construction industry. Thank you very much. It's been very interesting. Sure, it's been interesting. It's a pleasure to have your presence here and this level of speakers. Let's continue now with the World Summit on Circular Economy from Córdoba, Argentina.
Soy Laura López Coquet, diseñadora industrial, y junto al arquitecto Mauro Barrio y al diseñador industrial Cristian San Martino creamos Bolsa. Bolsa es una marca que arranca en 2019 con la idea de recuperar un material disponible en la ciudad de Córdoba y generar objetos de uso cotidiano. El primer producto que diseñamos y comercializamos es una billetera que está hecha totalmente con papel craft que recuperamos de la empresa cementera Holcim. El objetivo, además de basarnos en la economía circular, es generar un objeto de calidad y que mejore la funcionalidad. Entonces, con la billetera podés acceder fácilmente a tus tarjetas y en caso de apuro tenés una tirita de emergencia que te ayuda a sacar todas. Durante algunos meses del 2020, a raíz de la pandemia del COVID-19, la construcción quedó completamente paralizada y quedaron en desuso un montón de bolsas fechadas que por cuestiones de gestión no podían reincorporarse a la producción de la cementera. Estas bolsas están realizadas totalmente con papel craft que surge de bosques certificados y tiene la característica de ser impermeable, resistente, con excelente acabado y calidad de impresión. Cuando detectamos esta oportunidad, planteamos generar un objeto que tuviese un ciclo prácticamente cerrado. De los árboles se llevan las bolsas, esas bolsas que no son utilizadas para su función esperada son la materia prima para nuestras billeteras. Agregamos valor diseñando objetos de uso cotidiano manufacturados totalmente en nuestra ciudad y que luego de que termine su vida útil alrededor de los 6 meses puede ser reciclado o compostado y así vuelve a la tierra. El proceso de producción tiene varias etapas y genera un puesto de trabajo de jornada completa. Lo primero que hacemos es gestionar el acceso a las bolsas. Las primeras 2 series de la billetera estuvieron hechas con bolsas de cemento de Holcim, pero probamos también con otras bolsas, por ejemplo de harina o de industria del plástico. Para las series de 500 billeteras se reutilizan más o menos 70 bolsas. Después esas bolsas deben transformarse en pliegos lisos que se generan a partir del corte con una plantilla seleccionando la estampa de la bolsa para generar distintos modelos acorde al estilo de la bolsa. Estos pliegos de 500 unidades se llevan a troquelar y se obtiene lo que es el troquel de la billetera, que consta de una parte principal, una tira y 3 refuerzos internos. En este punto se genera un residuo que nosotros aprovechamos para enviar distintos productos de nuestra marca y de otros amigos emprendedores. El paso que sigue es el armado de la billetera en sí, que dura aproximadamente 15 minutos, es un proceso manual, pero está automatizado. El troquel se transforma en el producto a través de plegar y de unir el papel con pegamento al agua no tóxico. El último paso es el control de calidad, donde se le agrega el packaging, que es una faja que está impresa y que incluye toda la información necesaria. En este caso utilizamos papel craft virgen, pero la idea es optimizar este recurso también. En realidad el proceso no termina en el paso anterior, porque lo que comienza luego que tenemos el producto listo es la etapa de la venta y la postventa, que es otro proceso también igual de determinante. Este proceso nosotros lo hacemos mediante redes sociales y una tienda online con envíos a todo el país, tanto por mayor como por menor. Decidimos trabajar a partir de la economía circular porque creemos que el problema de los residuos se puede atacar desde el diseño. Coincidimos y buscamos aplicar los 3 principios de la economía circular, tanto eliminar los residuos y la contaminación desde el diseño, como mantener los productos y los materiales en uso. Bolsa apunta a generar toda una línea de objetos de uso cotidianos, entre los que se encuentran otros modelos de billeteras, fundas para notebook, cartucheras, señaladores de libros. Además, queremos posicionar nuestro producto como regalo empresarial sustentable y largar una línea exclusiva con obras o dibujos de artistas locales, aprovechando su capacidad de personalización. De todos modos, el objetivo más ambicioso de Bolsa es diseñar un sistema de gestión para también recuperar y darle valor a las bolsas que se utilizan en la construcción. Para dimensionar la disponibilidad de esta materia prima, Holcim, a inicios de este año, inauguró una planta que produce 120.000 bolsas diarias. La idea es procesar estas bolsas aprovechando que cuentan con un poco de cemento en su interior y lograr un material de alta calidad para generar tanto objetos de uso cotidiano como ciertos elementos que se puedan reincorporar a la construcción. Para la construcción de una casa promedio se utilizan más o menos 150 bolsas que van quedando en las obras a lo largo de los meses de trabajo y luego se tiran y no se aprovechan. Entonces nuestra idea es incorporar un impacto social también en este proyecto, incorporando a los y las albañiles en la cadena de valor a partir de comprarles las bolsas. De este modo el material se mantendría acopiado en buen estado hasta su posterior retiro, procesado y convertirlo así en un objeto.
Principalmente el eje de arquea de la economía circular, utilizando un desecho, que es el aceite vegetal usado, lo utilizamos como una materia prima para hacer un nuevo producto, que en este caso es el biodiesel, que lo utilizamos como combustible para motor. Una vez que llega el aceite usado, que es nuestra materia prima, ponemos calentadores para sacar la humedad y el resto de comida que tiene. Una vez que nos utilizamos el aceite, lo mezclamos con un alcohol y un catalizador, y pasa el proceso de transesterificación en el que las grasas del aceite se unen con el alcohol. Y ahí tenemos arriba el biodiesel y decantado el glicerol, que el glicerol funciona muy bien como desengrasante. En la utilización del biodiesel para nosotros tenemos muy bajo costo de recolección y mucho menos emisiones que el gasoil convencional.
Nuestra marca se llama Felipo Baby. Hacemos accesorios de bebé partiendo de textiles reciclados. Somos 3 socias, quien les habla Silvana, Vero y Maru. Básicamente lo que hacemos es recorrer fábricas, talleres, modistas y todo el remanente de la producción, es decir, lo que para ellos es un desecho, para nosotros es materia prima. Hacemos una selección minuciosa de los retazos y de este desperdicio y con eso partimos para desarrollar nuestros productos. Tenemos una amplia gama de productos porque cada producto depende del tamaño de retazo que conseguimos. Todo, absolutamente todo, parte de retazos textiles y a su vez nos proponemos a tener desperdicio cero. ¿Qué quiere decir eso? Que todo lo que a nosotros nos queda de remanente también lo donamos. También tenemos otros 2 propósitos más allá del ecológico, que es un propósito social y un propósito económico. En lo social lo que hacemos es buscar talleres, quienes van a confeccionar nuestros productos, que sean sostén de hogar. Mujeres que necesiten una salida laboral y contratamos esa mano de obra. Y por otro lado tenemos una finalidad económica. Nosotros tenemos un producto que es sumamente económico y que eso va a permitir de que la gente tenga mucho más acceso, que haya una alta rotación para que el impacto ambiental sea aún mayor. Dentro de nuestra línea de productos hacemos todo lo que son accesorios de bebés, que vamos desde baberos, que son todos los tipos de baberos, las bandanas, que son como unos pañuelitos que se usan ahora, baberos para recién nacidos, baberos para bebés un poco más grandecitos que ya empiezan a comer. Como así también hacemos portachupetes, que demandan retacitos mucho más pequeños. Hacemos vinchas, turbantes, gorritos de todo tipo. Y de acuerdo al tipo de retazo va a ser el tipo de producto. Por ahí recibimos retazos que son un poco más grandes y nos permiten hacer mantas o hacer ediciones limitadas de bolsitas para dormir. Todo va variando y vamos agregando productos nuevos a medida que nos vamos inspirando con los retazos que recibimos. Además de los accesorios de bebés, productos de la pandemia que estamos viviendo, vimos la oportunidad de desarrollar tapabocas bajo el mismo concepto, obviamente teniendo en cuenta todas las consideraciones y las necesidades que tiene que tener un barbijo. Entonces es un producto 100% reciclado, tiene 3 capas de tela y a su vez en el centro tiene fiselina que viene de otro tipo de industria y de otro tipo de desperdicio. Maru y yo teníamos una marca de ropa para chicos y del corte surgían millones de retazos y pedazos que nunca nos animamos a tirar para no generar ese desecho. Luego, por las circunstancias de la economía, nos vimos obligadas a cerrar y dijimos, bueno, ¿qué hacemos con estos retazos? Les demos una segunda vida. Y así surgió Felipo, digamos. Dijimos, bueno, ¿qué entra en este retazo? Porque no podemos sacar una remera, pero sí empezamos a buscar en qué rubro podíamos introducirnos para darle el mejor uso a esos retazos. Uno de nuestros primeros desafíos era que la gente creyera en este concepto ecológico. Al principio nos costó mucho que la gente entendiera el valor agregado de nuestro producto más allá del producto en sí. Hoy en día notamos que es cada día mucha más gente la que entiende y la que le da importancia a toda la parte ecológica. Así que ese es nuestro desafío, generar, digamos, que también las empresas que donan los retazos sean conscientes del daño que generan tirando esos retazos y que busquen, así como estamos nosotras, hay un montón de personas y emprendimientos más que le pueden dar una segunda vida a esos retazos y ayudar al medio ambiente. Creo que entre todos los cordobeses, ya sean empresas grandes o pequeños emprendedores como nosotros, podemos aportar nuestro granito de arena para lograr un mundo mejor. Nosotros todos nuestros desperdicios los donamos a pequeñas productoras de villitas o que necesitan esos productos más pequeños y creemos que empresas más grandes pueden también donar sus retazos para que entre todos aportemos nuestro granito de arena para un mundo mejor.
Bueno, nosotros somos Cicla y hemos estado desarrollando, buscando oportunidades de diseño en conjunto con el diseño industrial y una gestora ambiental que es bióloga. El equipo este se conformó a partir de la interacción y sinergia de distintos profesionales o estudiantes, como es mi caso y el de mi compañero. Yo soy Rodrigo Castaño, estudiante de diseño industrial de 4º año. En la misma condición académica está Javier Abraham y María Álvarez de Miguel como bióloga y gestora ambiental. Entre los tres, en sinergia con esto y creyendo también en el desarrollo de la innovación abierta, en un colectivo que también podemos llegar a consultar a futuros usuarios, a ingenieros industriales, a colegas del mismo rubro, estamos desarrollando este producto. Dentro de esas oportunidades encontramos un valor en todo lo que es el cultivo y empezamos a trabajar en cuanto a la investigación, que eso nos llevó aproximadamente un año. Y el día de hoy, después de algunas maquetas, de algunas verificaciones y de entregarnos también un poco a la innovación abierta, de conversar con otros biólogos, con otros gestores ambientales, con otros diseñadores, con colegas del rubro también y con ingenieros agrónomos, llegamos a un concepto de cultivo que se basa en la permacultura como cultura permanente, como una visión más holística de la utilización de recursos de una manera circular. Cicla, como innovación, en realidad no está innovando en absolutamente nada, concretamente porque nos estamos basando en cosas que realmente ya existen, en cosas que nunca deberían haber dejado de existir y de saberes tal vez muy viejos que de a poco se fueron diluyendo y hoy queremos traerlos de nuevo al saber cultural. La permacultura, en la bajada hacia el producto que nosotros hacemos, es concebir en el cultivo un sistema que no sea cerrado como el de una maceta, sino un sistema abierto. Dígase de otra forma, un ecosistema, en el cual nosotros podemos tener una zona de cultivo y al mismo tiempo, en sinergia, involucrar el mundo del compost con el lombricompuesto y toda la interacción de líquidos, de lixiviado, de agua, de riego, de crecimiento de plantas, de descomposición y llegar al compost, se pueda reutilizar y volver a integrar en el sistema sin ninguna pérdida, que sea un sistema que se autonutra y que se construya a sí mismo. Nosotros trabajamos la economía circular desde varios aspectos. Por un lado, la misma permacultura, de hecho, es económicamente circular porque utiliza recursos que vuelve a revalidarlos en un mismo sistema y los vuelve a reutilizar. Y por el otro lado, desde el lado productivo, hay dos posibilidades. Uno de los procesos sería la fabricación de este producto a través de rotomoldeo. En los dos casos, de hecho, es rotomoldeo, pero por un lado estaríamos trabajando con empresas que trabajan rotomoldeo a través de plásticos, de polietileno de alta densidad, de ABS, por ejemplo, y ellos tienen la capacidad de procesar plásticos de grandes generadores de desechos, por ejemplo, de autopartes. En base a esos desechos que podemos reutilizar, concretaríamos este producto. El segundo camino es trabajar en una escala ya inferior, también de rotomoldeo, pero el cuerpo principal serían resinas que podrían ser cargadas con otras partículas inertes que sean sobrantes de la industria. Por un lado, nosotros contemplamos el hecho de reciclar y de reutilizar materiales, y en esto de la economía circular también está la idea de que, llegado el caso de que cierto desperdicio no puede reintegrarse en el sistema, hay que pensar y ser conscientes de cuál va a ser la deposición final. En ese caso, esos productos que son de deposición final serían nuestras cargas para hacer este rotomoldeo. En la etapa de diseño que nos encontramos, como mencionaba, que es el diseño conceptual, estamos ya migrando hacia una etapa de diseño detallado y desarrollo, por lo cual nos encontramos activamente frente a diversas mentorías, consultas, realizando focus group a futuros usuarios y finalmente, bueno, en la concreción de este producto, buscar financiación para poder largar los primeros prototipos al mercado y realmente generar este vínculo que estamos proponiendo.
El mundo ha estado viendo al plástico como un enemigo de la solución ambiental. Yo lo veo justamente lo contrario, digamos, el plástico tiene tantas posibilidades, lo que tenemos es que volver a entender cómo usarlo para que el impacto ambiental sea cada vez menor. Así que con eso nace CIPA, que es la nueva marca con la que vamos a trabajar para la industria, en lo que sean necesidades en plástico, pero nosotros agregándole una mirada de las posibilidades que tiene el plástico para ser parte de la solución del desafío ambiental. Por ejemplo, en este momento estamos trabajando con economía circular en un producto que reemplazaría el vaso de polipapel. Una persona que toma un vaso de agua va a estrenar un producto, va a ser un vaso nuevo, pero no va a ser nuevo el plástico. Luego lo disponen, nosotros lo retiramos, lo reprocesamos y volvemos a darle un vaso nuevo para que vuelvan a trabajar.
Seguimos en la Cumbre Mundial de Economía
Nous
Circular y
continuons
esta
dans
vez
ce sommet
para
mondial
abordar un
d'économie
tema que a veces
circulaire
aplicamos
pour
a las
travailler un
personas, ser
sujet
resiliente.
appliqué aux
Sí,
personnes.
Let's continue now with the Congress. Now we're going to approach the issue of resilience. Resilient cities. Sebastián, the title is Circular Economy and Material Management, New Strategies for the SDGs. And we're going to hear from the moderator for this panel in our country, Deborah Placher. Thank you for the presentation. I think it's very opportune to have the resilience not only of individuals but also of societies and cities, especially in this pandemic context. That's why we're going to hear very attentively. We're going to hear from Peter Heck, CEO of the Institute of Environmental Campus in Bakersfield of the Trier University of Applied Sciences. Peter, adelante.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Let me share my screen with you so I can
Pantalla con ustedes.
share a few ideas from my side about circular economy and material flow management.
En cuanto a las economías que quería compartir con ustedes.
Well, I want to share this topic with you.
Quiero compartir este tema con ustedes.
Afternoon, it's about circular economy, of course, and the tool for implementing this circular economy,
Para implementar la economía
applied material
circular.
flow management. And we focus a little bit on companies and communities. Well, I'm going to tackle three issues, basically. One is my university, which is the only zero-emission university in the world. So it's a model case, a reality lab for circular economy. And then a few ideas about my institute, which is the institute working on material flow management and circular economy for 20 years now, and some case studies. So you can see there is a vision, but there's also a real application in companies and in communities.
Las comunidades.
This is my university. You see, it's a place with two rooftops. So we're using solar energy wherever we can. It's a standard building procedure. We are one of the greenest universities in the world. And we are number 6 worldwide with regard to sustainability. And we are number 1 in Germany. And we are part of an international sustainability campus network. So we are not only talking about circular economy and sustainability, we are really doing it. So we are physically doing it. This means we are really knowing about the problems, about the costs, about the networks which you need to build up a resilient society. Well, the backbone of our carbon neutrality is actually very old technology. We use our waste, the waste of our county, we use to supply heat, cold, and electricity to 3,000 people. Now, though we take the waste, the so-called waste of our county, we take it and we turn it into energy sources. So we have a win-win situation, and a circular economy always asks for win-win situations. So we must make benefits from previous so-called wastes. And what we are doing here, we're using kitchen waste, basically, and we use waste wood. 2 technologies. We put this technology into an industrial estate. So we create an industrial estate, a place where we put companies. The companies, they use so-called waste. They produce a resource. They employ people. They reduce waste issues, and they create green energy and innovative technology. This is what the circular economy is looking for. Those cooperation procedures which lead to a new zero waste and zero carbon emission future. And we have been doing this here for 20 years already, so we really know about the problems and the investment and the paybacks. The rest of my campus is doing everything else, what you know from literature and from books. We use geothermal heat, energy efficiency, plus energy houses, of course, solar energy. We use rainwater collection system. We are flushing our toilets with rainwater, not with tap water, because this is much cheaper. So we reduce water footprint of the university, we reduce the carbon footprint, we reduce the ecological footprint. My institute, which I'm heading, which I founded 20 years ago, is actually working around this idea of being carbon neutral, being zero emission. Now, I'm employing 80 people, 5 million euro annual turnover, and doing consultancy work all over the world. Also educational work all over the world. So we tell people how to become carbon neutral, how to be part of a circular economy, and how to make this happen in an economic mode. Important, especially if you don't have money, you must stop actually wasting money. This is what we try to communicate to our friends all over the world. The basic idea, the basic tool for achieving circular economy is not talking about it and writing books. It's also important, but the basic tool is to have a management idea. And what you see here is the very basics of our management philosophy. The left side, you see a system, a company. Could also be a city, but here show a company with a very simple throughput. They import material energies and they use a lot of money for this. The money is leaving the system, and they're not using their potentials. The potential, this red stop signal shows they're not using their own potential. They're not tapping into their own resource, not in the human resources, not in their material, not in the energy resources. That's a very inefficient throughput mode. The right picture shows you the change. We are activating the resources, the potential which were not used before. The green circle. Now they are totally aware of what they can do, how they can do it, how much money they need, and what people should do it. So we're creating a secondary economy, a circular economy, which is actually parallel to the linear economy. And the circular economy is growing and growing, and the linear economy is getting smaller and smaller. And the system is adding value and adding value and adding value. And this is the basic idea of what we do. To do this, you have to clearly analyze your system. A material flow analysis must be done, but not an academic one. It must be one which is supposed to be a base for a business plan. So it must be a real analysis. So not listening to any freak figures and data which the systems normally give you. No, you must really be sure the data are correct. Then you can put them into change management with a business plan and technical proposals. Why do we need this? I think it's a no-brainer, and I don't want to focus too much time on this because I think you all know this, but our world, our human subsystem is actually already infringing the basic health of our planet. The left side, you see our world 150 years ago, and the right side, you see our world today. We humans created a system which is growing and growing and growing, but our planet is not growing. You all know this, so we have a problem. We have too much CO2 in our atmosphere, we have too much wastewater, too much waste, and not enough zinc capacity. So our mode must change. And it must change also economically. So we must tell the business people, the people with money, that you can make money with a different mode of operation. Otherwise, they will not be on our side. Well, the problem is, and you see this in this little comic, the climate problem, which is part of this overloading of our natural systems, of course, it's very serious. We just talked about it, that in the Mediterranean, all the forests are burning. But actually, nobody cares about this. Now, a few people really care. People care, and you can this on this little comic, care when you talk about money being lost. So our problem is that we must transfer all those problems in money terms. So we must explain to our society, our politicians, our entrepreneurs, that here we are also burning money, revenues, potential business, and that not doing this also can be very green new business. And then we will have the support of the business community, and this will make our life much easier. Well, circular economy, another thing which I'm not going to explain in detail because as you're all aware of, this is Ellen MacArthur Foundation illustration. We're talking about basically reuse, repair, not using special resources which are scarce or which are heavily pollutant. So we have really to think about each and every material which we are circling in our society. There's a tremendous work. On the other hand, it's a lot of employment for our academic people and our non-academic people. So from the side of employment, innovation, and development of society, it's a fantastic opportunity. Yeah? But we have to put money behind it, that you can pay people for being employed by saving, by more efficiency, by new products. And this is the big idea. It's not an environmental thing we are doing. It's really a new economic paradigm. Yeah? And this we must tell to society, to our leaders. It's a new economic paradigm. So a new way to make money. Change management to circular economy is a new way to make money, to lift the phoenix out of the ashes. And this is something what I'm telling all my friends in Africa, very poor mayors, very poor people, that they can use circular economy to step out of poverty. Yeah? Here you see the Kuznets curve. I think you're all aware the Kuznets curve shows the relationship between environmental pollution and economic development. Now on the x-axis, you see the economic development, yeah? And on the y-axis, you see the pollution. So when you are in the left lower corner, then you are poor and relatively clean. Yeah? The more you move up the y-axis, the more dirty you get. And the black curve you see is actually an empirical curve. So it's an analysis, a retrospective analysis of the development of the so-called developed world. Yeah. So we developed our societies by creating a lot of pollution. The first part of the curve, the left part of the curve, now, the pollution was tremendous, killing people, killing ecosystems, creating a lot of sick people. Before we started to be aware that this cannot be the future of a society, there was a tipping point, yeah, when people start to reflect on what they're doing, and then they started to clean up. This happened in Japan, happened in the United States, happened in Germany, in Europe, yeah, so this tipping point. And we expect it to happen everywhere in the world. The only problem is, when we did this, we, the so-called developed world, there was enough resource in this world, enough think capacity. So we could really afford to make economic development which is really spoiling the environment till we get the level of awareness, which then leads to a change in policy. The newcomers in development, like China, like India, Africa, many parts of South America, South Asia, they don't have the resources anymore to go the normal Kuznets way development. They cannot. Physically, these resources and capacities are no longer existing. We took it. So that's why they have to jump into circular economy. It's a demand and a unique opportunity. And you see the green line. This is actually bypassing the Kuznets curve. And this you only can do by jumping into a circular economy mode when you are still very poor. On the left side of the curve, you are still poor, but you're already using technologies from the right side of the curve, where the so-called developed rich world is doing a lot of fancy environmental things. So we have to shift this technology to the very poor countries now. Yeah? And they must be able to afford this. So we must create the business for them that having no waste is beneficial for a poor African mayor, like it's beneficial for a poor mayor in Argentina and a poor mayor in Germany. Yeah? But on different levels, of course. And this is what we are doing. We try to shortcut the normal economic and environment development as shown by the Kuznets curve. And this is a fascinating thing. This curve is actually not my invention. It's done by Chinese scientists. They told me that China cannot develop like Europe did because if Chinese go our way, this world will implode because there's not enough think capacity for all the pollution. So we talk about decoupling economic growth from source and sink, stress, zero emission as a guiding principle, not a fancy idea. Zero emission is a basic standard demand for everything we're doing. And material flow management is operational toolkit. So how to operate the new material flows. This means starting from the basics, from waste to resource management. Forget about waste. Eliminate the waste department in all your offices and all your governments. Waste is a stupidity. It's an invention, human invention. Waste does not exist in this world. It's the wrong material at the wrong time at the wrong place. If you consider waste as a resource and you allocate technology, brain capacity, and money to turn it into resource, you will have employment, no pollution, and innovation. That's why we, in our institute, what we are doing, for us, waste is a management failure. We are doing no waste strategies. And for this, we use resource centers. Our landfills are resource centers. To do so, you must be willing to get your brain and your hands dirty. And many academics all over the world, they don't want to be dirty anymore. They want to be clean. That's why they are going to universities. This is a big problem because you have to get dirty in order to understand what's happening in this so-called waste or wastewater sector. You see the left side, those landfills, whatever it is, it's actually the most stupid way to handle a resource and the most expensive way. That's why Germany stopped it. 2006, we stopped landfilling untreated waste. And we started to build this factories on our former landfill sites. Those factories, they are creating resources for waste. So technology-wise, it's a no-brainer. It's not at all a problem. Economically-wise, we must think about how to finance, what kind of money we use. It's, of course, not a hit and run business. It's not a monkey business. It's patient money business. So pension funds, they can invest in resource centers. It's a safe, long-term, clean, ethical, environmental investment. And we're talking to pension funds. Biomass in Argentina, in South America, in Africa, in Asia, most of the waste is biomass. In Europe, it's only 35%. So what is waste in this picture? Basically, it's 1 ton biomass, then it's 5 liters of oil and 600 kg fertilizer. And it's a very nice base for soil creation, soil for agriculture. Or it's waste. It's waste, then you're done. Then you are spending money on it, and you want to have it transported far away, and you don't care anymore. If it's fertilizer and energy, you want to have it close, and you want to invest, and you are actually taking waste as a resource. As you buy oil and gas, you take waste. This is the two worlds. You must make a decision where to be in. If you want to be in the waste world, things are easy but expensive and not sustainable. If you're in the resource world, things are complicated and sustainable, but they will push your society to next levels. If you have this paradigm, then there's always demand to academics, to administrative people, to politicians to do more and better. Take more energy and more resource out of a so-called non-longer usable product like waste. Well, to plan a bioenergy resource center, what we're doing all over the world, it needs a lot of analysis. You need to know where you have what kind of material, how the transportation mode, what are the costs, what are the scenario for cost development, how you can employ people, what people you should employ, like the informal sector and the waste. A lot of things to discuss. It's a complicated thing. You are producing something. So as a government, you have to sell products. No longer only treatment waste, no, you are selling products. So you are an entrepreneur suddenly. Now this has to change. But in a circular economy, many people change their operational mode. So administrations no longer are just administrating in a circular economy. They are operating. They are proactive. They have to be. And this must be educated, must be taught to the people, and they must be willing to relearn things. In Germany, we're doing this to a certain part, but we are not yet perfect. There are a lot of things to be done, but at least we started to use all our organic waste. So we are collecting separately and we put it in the biogas plant, we create energy and fertilizer out of it. From the so-called non-lignite waste, we make biogas, and from the lignite green waste, we make wood chips, and we burn it in our schools or in district heating systems. And how is the link of this to our community development? You know, I'm here in a poor region, in a mountain area. So one of the poorer regions in Germany, people are leaving this place because they don't have a chance to make their living here. So on those villages, they come to us and they ask me, how can we lower our costs? How can we create development and investment innovation? And I tell them, stop being stupid for the first point. Try to create your energy yourself. You're sitting right in the middle of the mountains, in the forest area, we have a lot of wind and solar and biomass. Why are you buying oil and gas? So we switch this. And you see these two situations. On the left side, today's structural problems. They have nearly 800,000 euro costs for purchasing energy. And this is without any value. The energy is coming from abroad, not even from this place, not even from Germany. No development perspective because it's not their resource. No innovation, no climate protection, not even resource security. And I tell them, okay, do your own energy. And they tell me, I don't have money. I said, but you have money. You are purchasing energy for 800,000 euro every year. So use this money and develop your own supply based on your own solar energy, on your own biomass, on your own forestry, on your own waste, on your own water or wind energy. And then we start to analyze what they have. And we develop a divestment plan, and we develop operational costs, and the payback for this new system. And then they start now to shift from spending money in climate threatening fossil energies to investing into climate protecting, regional value adding own local resources. Though they get slowly more affluent because they are lending money and they pay back the money by the savings they have from not importing products. So they get slowly more affluent. They own something suddenly, and they are clean, and they're innovative, and they have some jobs on site. And this is what they tell them. We are doing this for 100 villages right now in Germany, for example. And see what happens. So it's not theory. It's happened and it's documented. This county is a prize winner, many awards for the development. When they came to us, they had nearly 300 million euro loss of cash every year. And they were poor. Yes?
It's very interesting, everything you're talking to us today, but I would like, because we're running short on time, I would like to ask you something. After listening everything you said to us today, how the pandemic is interacting with all these subjects we're talking about?
It's not so much interacting because people have more money and more time to take care of their own systems. They're not traveling so much. They're more focusing on their immediate environment. The only issue what we have, we cannot make so many town hall meetings, which are to a certain extent very important. Town hall meetings to meet the people, to talk to them, to yell at them, to really to make them nervous, to push them to do more. And this you cannot really do with web meetings. You must be physically confronting them and telling them what's wrong with what they're doing and how they can change. This is something.
So it has a good side.
We have a lot of good sides from the pandemic for the project we're doing in Germany. Of course, I cannot fly right now to Argentina. I cannot fly to Africa. I'm not allowed as a public employee to fly. Those projects are now on hold. But the things we can do here, it's really, even more efficient because people have time to think about things. Before they were always traveling, running, and now they're reflecting more on things.
Okay, and the other thing I would like to ask you is about the public sector. What's the importance of the public sector working together with the private sector?
It's of key importance because the public sector, they take care of the basic welfare of the people in the administrative area. Although they know about the material flows, they can organize, they can inform, they can educate. So they can put the people in their places and they can ask companies to cooperate for sharing resources to offer so-called excess products to the society or society can offer to them. Look, my university, we are government, but we ask companies to handle our waste and give us back the heat and electricity. So they are implementing things which we cannot do, but we can tell them what to implement, and we can organize markets for them. That is circular economy. We have to redefine the role of public and of private sector in order to be more cooperative. In many countries in South America, the public sector is not strong and the private sector is very strong, and they're actually a little bit abusing society, and that's why you have a lot of economic and environment problems. In Europe, it's the other way around. Here, the public sector is very strong, so we have a lot of inefficiency because public sector is everything but not efficient. So we have to find the best between those two areas, and this is a part of circular economy to give each of those two a new role, and teach each to be more cooperative. And the big companies now, at least in Europe, they really are serious about circular economy and sustainability. They really are changing the material flows. And though they need the government, they need the area around, they need new places, they need new markets, new cooperation partners.
Last question for you, Peter. How do you think the new generations are thinking about everything you talked to us today?
We are teaching a lot of young people, and they, of course, are fascinated because, we old people, we left them a world which is actually a very dirty and a very disastrous world, and they have to live in this world for the next 50, 60 years, so they are looking for options and solutions, and talking to them, teaching them, I can give them at least examples how we can have a good life, even can be an entrepreneur by saving the world. It means we don't have to be a bad entrepreneur. We don't have to feel bad by making money, because we can make money by creating a new green world. And this is for many of my students very important, because like I and you and everybody, they also want to have a nice life. They don't want just to save and not to spend money. They are young and they want to have a good life, and I show them how they can do this, and how they can be part of a new economy. And this economy is, I think, a very interesting economy, but it takes a lot of thinking, new investments, new models, and we must forget about a lot of linear structures, what we all have learned in our universities. So we have to reframe our universities. A lot of things to do, but examples exist. I see from the speakers in your conference, all those people I also know, they are also front runners in new ideas. So nobody can say the ideas are not there. They are there. The money is also there. And so it's only up to us to push, make decisions, and be part of the change.
Okay, thank you, Peter. We have the last minute. I don't know if there's anything else you want to tell us today.
No, basically not. Only that in everything what I told you so far, and all the things which I could not tell you because shortage of time, it's also part of educational system. We are teaching material flow management, and we invite everybody to come to our place for educational exchange, to learn from you and to tell you about what we are doing, so that we can adapt these ideas to each and every place in this world, so we make a better, greener, more sustainable, circular world.
Thank you, Peter. We look forward to be able to fly again, so you can come to Argentina, or any one of us go to Germany. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye. Peter Heck. Bueno, fue muy interesante, ¿no es cierto? Peter Heck dándonos su perspectiva también, ¿no es cierto?, sobre la economía circular, sobre la importancia de la educación en la sociedad y en las nuevas generaciones.
Bueno, Deborah, nosotros te lo vamos a decir en español para que quede bien en claro. Te agradecemos muchísimo.
Thank you, Deborah, very much for being with us.
Para mí estar acá. Muchísimas gracias.
It's great to be here. A great honor, and then have a safe trip back to Buenos Aires. We are right in the center of Argentina.
Muchísimas gracias
Thank
nuevamente.
you.
Sebastián, tenemos que
Again,
seguir.
Sebastián, we have
De esta manera
to
vamos a continuar
go
entonces
on.
con todas y
That's
con
right.
todos
We'll
ustedes
continue
transitando la Cumbre
with
Mundial de Economía
the
Circular
next
desde la
panel
capital
in
de
the
la
World
provincia de
Summit on
Córdoba,
Circular
República
Economy.
Argentina, para todo el mundo. Estimados participantes, continuamos en el desarrollo de esta segunda jornada de la Cumbre Mundial de Economía Circular. Y luego de la exposición del reconocido disertante Peter Heck, vamos a dar lugar a otro gran momento en esta cumbre.
Así es momento de presentar a la moderadora que nos acompaña a continuación. Ella es Maru Dufar, magíster en periodismo por la Universidad de San Andrés, licenciada en comunicación social de la Universidad de La Plata, periodista política y de investigación, integra el equipo de Periodismo para Todos desde el año 2013 y hoy conduce junto a Luciana Geuma el único programa político de mujeres en Todo Noticias. Está al frente además de TN Central junto a Nicolás Viñaski, tiene su propio programa en Radio Con Voz desde el año 2018 y es autora del libro La Argentina Rota, Divisiones y Reconoceres alrededor de la grieta.
Y el disertante que ahora nos va a acompañar de
And the
manera
speaker,
virtual es Peter Ostoich,
Peter
él es CEO de
Ostoich,
Neptuno
who's
Pumps
the
y
CEO
fundador
of
del
Neptuno
Centro de
Pumps
Innovación
and
y
the
Economía
founder
Circular,
of the
CIE,
Innovation
en su
Center
presentación
and
denominada
Circular
Economía
Economy.
Circular 4.0.
And the name of the
Bienvenida,
panel is Circular Economy 4.0. Welcome. Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you, Petar, very much for being with us. This is an opportunity to listen to your vast experience on circular economy, so we can shift from a linear to a circular economy in Argentina and in Latin America in general. Could you please share your experience, your ideas with us? I mean, the importance from moving to linear to circular economy in our
Muchísimas
territories.
gracias. No sé
Thank
si están
you.
viendo la pantalla compartida, ¿sí? Perfecto. Bueno, muchísimas gracias por la
Thank you
invitación.
very much for the
Felicitaciones por el mega
invitations
evento
and
que están
congratulations
desarrollando y
on
desde ya
this
dejarlos
huge
invitados
event.
para que
And
conozcan más casos de economía circular en español de todo Hispanoamérica. Los invito a mi podcast
I would
Revolución
like to
Circular, que lo
invite you
pueden encontrar en
to
todas las
our
plataformas globales y también a
podcast
que quedemos
on
conectados
circular
a través de redes
economy,
sociales. Para mí
so you
siempre es
can
un
listen
gusto
to
resolver cualquier duda
our
o consulta y
experiences and
entablar
all the
conversaciones.
successful
Para
cases
comenzar
in
esta
Latin America. To
presentación,
start with this
quiero
presentation,
contarles una
I'd like
pequeña
to
historia. Yo
tell
tengo
you
el
a
honor
little
y el
story.
gusto de
I
ser
have the
emprendedor y
honor to
director de una
be an
organización que
entrepreneur and
promueve
director
el
of an
emprendimiento de alto
organization
impacto
that promotes
que
high
se llama
impact
Endeavor, que está presente en más de
entrepreneurship
40 países y apoyamos a
that
más de
is called
2.000
Endeavor, and we
emprendedores
support over
de alto impacto,
2,000
también con
entrepreneurs
fuerte presencia en Argentina. Y
in
hace
Argentina
unos pocos años tuve la
and in Latin
oportunidad
America.
de
And a few
visitar
years ago,
junto
I
a
had
este
the
grupo de
chance to
emprendedores
visit
la
together with
isla
this
de
group
Rapa
of
Nui,
entrepreneurs
antes conocida como
the
Isla de Pascua,
island
donde tuve
of
la
the
oportunidad de
Easter's
conocer
Island,
y
and I had the
levantar data
opportunity
que resulta
to
muy relevante,
collect
me di
data
cuenta
that
en
is
el tiempo,
very
para los
relevant, I
desafíos que estamos
realize,
viviendo
that have
hoy.
to do with the challenges we're
Resulta que
facing
cuando
today.
llegaron los primeros
When the
exploradores
first
alrededor de
explorers arrived
1722 a
in
Isla Rapa Nui, se encontraron con un lugar
1702,
prácticamente
they
devastado,
encountered
el
a place that
suelo
was practically
erosionado, los recursos
devastated,
naturales
the eroded
prácticamente
lands,
consumidos, y
and
lo más terrible y
the
penoso
most
es que la
terrible thing is
población
that the
prácticamente
population back
había
then
desaparecido.
had disappeared
Buscando más
virtually.
información me
As
encontré con
we
este libro muy
collected more
interesante de
data,
Jared
I came
Diamond que se
across
llama
this
Colapso,
book
y él
by
analiza
Jared
el caso de
Diamond
Rapa
called
Nui y en
Collapse,
una
and
parte
he
se pregunta
analyzes this
¿por qué no
case, and
miraron
at
a su
some point he
alrededor
wonders
y no
why
se
didn't
detuvieron
they look
antes que
around
fuera
and
demasiado tarde?
stop
¿Qué
before it
pensaba
was
esa
too late?
persona
I mean,
que
what
cortó
were they
el último
thinking?
árbol? Es una
I
pregunta
mean,
muy
what was the
importante
person that
para hacernos hoy en día.
cut the last
Y
tree,
cuando vemos las
cut down the
analogías,
last
la
tree was
analogía entre
thinking?
una
And when we
isla
see the
como Rapa
analogy
Nui
between
y nuestro
this
planeta,
island and our
es evidente
planet,
el
it
parecido.
is evident
Nuestro
how similar
planeta,
they
nuestra
are.
nave
Our
espacial
planet,
Tierra es
our
una isla que flota por el
spaceship,
océano
so to
cósmico de la
speak,
energía y
is
la
floating
materia.
around the
Y el
cosmic,
modelo
the universe,
económico
and the
que nosotros
economic
hemos
model
desarrollado en
that
estos
we have
últimos
developed in the
250 años desde la
last
primera
250
revolución
years after
industrial
the
no
first
es muy
industrial
distinto
revolution is
a las
not
prácticas que se
different from the
desarrollaban en el
practices
caso que
that
les acabo de
had
presentar de
been
la isla
developed in
Rapa
the
Nui.
Easter's
De
Island.
hecho,
In
este modelo
fact,
económico basado en
this
el extraer,
economic model is
producir y desechar nos
based
tiene
on
en una situación que
extracting,
lamentablemente
manufacturing,
fue reforzada
disposing
con el informe
is
que salió hace unos pocos
reinforced
días del
by
IPCC,
the
en que esta
IPCC
actividad ya ha
report
tenido un
released
impacto
a
sobre
few
nuestra biosfera.
days
Y hoy
ago,
estamos en una
and
situación
about the
donde la
impact on the
temperatura media
biosphere,
ha
and the
aumentado en
average
1,3 grados
temperature has
Celsius. Y estamos
increased by
en un punto decisivo como
3.1,
humanidad.
and
Tenemos
we
dos
are in a
caminos que seguir.
decisive
Uno, seguir
turning
haciendo las
point.
cosas como
We
las hemos
either
hecho
continue
durante
doing
250 años, que nos llevaría
we
directamente a aumentar la
continue with
temperatura en más de
our
5 grados
old
Celsius,
patterns,
o tomar la decisión
or
consciente y
we
decir
make the
necesitamos cambiar este
wise
modelo económico,
decision and
necesitamos hacer las
change
cosas
the
de una manera
economic model
distinta
and do things
y saber
differently.
que
And
podemos llegar a un
know
objetivo de no superar
that
los
we
1,5 grados
can
Celsius que quedan bien
reach
establecidos en
the
el
objective of
IPCC.
not surpassing the
Afortunadamente,
1.5
y en este sentido
degrees
traigo buenas
Celsius.
noticias,
And I have good
sabemos
news
cómo no
about
superar
this.
los 2 grados
We know
Celsius.
how to
Esto es a través de una
not to
economía que se ha
overcome
hablado
this, and this
en
is
el
through
evento,
an
una
economy
economía
that has been
verde, una
discussed
economía digital que
in
nos
this
permite
event, a
incluso seguir
digital green
produciendo armas
economy.
que nos
We can have these events without flying, so we could increase the participation also of renewable energies up to 65%, increase energy efficiency, and make decisions based on nature. But as you can see, we still have this last mile that in many races is kind of the most difficult things. That is how to get from 2 to 1.5, and this is only possible through a circular world, that is a model such as circular economy that you are discussing in this wonderful event as a new way to do things. And circular economy, and I know that it's clear, but let me add something. I mean, this butterfly chart that everybody is aware of, the right wing, we want to replicate the left wing, which is the biological wing, through recycling and regenerating to decrease the waste and also keep products for a longer time. But this butterfly is born from this is what we added from the Innovation Center, and this is the fourth industrial revolution. These are the Industry 4.0 technologies that are needed, and circular economy is the purpose to create further technologies to create the circular model. It is also important to single out what circular economy is not. It's not only recycling. Maybe it's the top of the tip of the iceberg, but there are many activities that have to do with circular economy, such as repairing, reutilization, redesigning, remanufacturing. To our extent, a continent such as a region such as Latin America, we can reimagine this economic model. And to highlight that circular economy, these are business models. You may have heard redesign, circular movement, but the extension, life extension through good design and the product as a service, to leave the products in the hands of the manufacturer. These are business models, to my understanding, the most important models in circular economy. And also, I'd like to highlight that the circular model is the only model that allows us to generate the triple impact, which is sustainable economic growth, generation of thousands of millions of high-quality jobs, very important in time of recovery, and the reduction of the carbon footprint and fighting climate change effectively. But at the same time, circular economy is sort of the conceptual umbrella of three mega trends that we're facing in the planet and as human beings. First, the urgent need of an energetic transition. Second, the fourth industrial revolution. And thirdly, the need for the urgent economic recovery post-pandemics. First of all, decarbonization and electrification of our planet. We need to decouple from the fossil fuels. This was reported in the last IPCC report. So we need to eliminate or at least reduce consumption of fossil fuels by 43 to 96% by 2050. And this is totally possible by using electricity in the planet. We'll be reducing the efficiency and improving electromobility. We'll be making these electricity models more efficient. So it'll be absolutely possible to cover this with the other kinds of energy, such as wind energy and solar energy. And this infrastructure that would be required will generate 28.6 million employees and will be reducing energy costs by 91%. So in this way, we will be improving our health and the health of our countries. When we look at the world, we see images such as these: renewable energies, solar, wind energy, and water energy. But I would like to push you to think about the world in these terms. Each of us will have the necessary infrastructure, as we see here. This is a solar city by Tesla. This is a normal roof. There are batteries. It's a solar roof, and there are electric cars. So each of us will be a node that would generate data and energy. And the most interesting thing about this, and which is the next challenge, the fourth industrial revolution, we're moving towards a world that would not only have the internet we know today, which is the internet of communication. We have three communications, energy internet, that is, each of us will be a generating node, and then also the transportation internet. We see examples such as Tesla's. There's immediate communication with all of the levels of the economy. But here I'd like to step back a little and consider that all of these key technologies are today I mean, if we have a look at this, the table, the periodic table, the most critical elements, and which are the scarce elements on the planet, and one of the latest reports by the International Energy Agency shows that transitioning to these technologies and energies requires the use of a higher use of these minerals, let alone mobility that is 8 to 10 times that consumes more than conventional transportation. But this will push the need for natural resources 6 times more in a neutral carbon scenario. It's not bad news, because this pushes for the need for a circular economy, because if we compare 1 ton of minerals, rocks, in extraction mining, for example, this contains about, it's a simplification, 5 grams of gold, 200 grams of silver, and 6 kilograms of copper, depending on the mine. In urban mining, 1 ton of cell phones has 150 grams of gold, 3 kilograms of silver, and 100 kilograms of copper. So this need will encourage a vital process such as urban mining. And as an example, as the 3 medals that Argentina won in the Olympic Games were made with recycled materials from electronic appliances devices. So what we have seen in the latest studies with the IDB is that extraction mining will decrease and urban mining will rise. Why is this happening? Well, basically because of the need for circular economy. With the Apple CEO sends a tweet saying the objective is to stop using mined virgin materials and only use recycled materials. Or Pandora, which is the largest jewel manufacturer, has the objective for 2025 is to only use recycled silver or gold. Google, Tesla, Apple, these large companies are on the trend. They are encouraging the use and the reuse of these materials and this resource, thereby encouraging circular economy. Second mega trend, the fourth industrial revolution. And this is not a continuity, it's discontinuity. That is, the technologies that Industry 4.0 are absolutely revolutionary. As they say, the future is here to stay, and the technologies that are here are changing completely as we understand economies, artificial intelligence, big data, robotics, 3D printing. They are helping us moving towards this circular economy model. And as the first and second industrial revolution had a linear economic model, the third industrial revolution had a model where they incorporated recycling. Without a doubt, from our center, we understand the fourth industrial revolution will have a circular model. And the third mega trend is this big threat and big challenge